Chapter 3. The Spider's Web. The terrain was easy to move through at a fast pace. The boy had much to think about as he ran easily beside the fox. Every few minutes he looked hard at the tattooed puzzle on his palm and thought, I gotta get rid of this. The boy even thought about what the fox had just told him. The path was gentle, with flowers, birds, bees, and mostly oak trees. As they ran on, the oak trees grew so close together that the boy could hardly see sky. This wasn't like the foothill oak forest he knew. The further they went, the darker and colder it became. Moss that resembled spider webs covered the trees. Oh, this is eerie, thought the boy. The path narrowed as the trees were now right next to each other. It was quite dark, and the boy didn't realize that the fox had left his side. As the boy squeezed between two trees, he noticed that beyond the next trees was brilliant sunlight. Excitedly, he squeezed into the small clearing in a dense oak forest. The boy thought the clearing to be about the size of a rounded basketball half-court. He was reminded of an old western fort because the trees stood practically trunk to trunk, completely surrounding the opening. The boy stepped into the circle, only to be startled by a hideous laugh. The hair stood up on the back of his neck as he looked around to find the source of this horrible laughter. Finally, the boy's gaze slowly lifted to the tops of the trees, where he saw a huge spider rapidly move to the center of the opening. The spider's presence cast a shadow across the circle to the base of the trees. The spider rested its legs on the trees all around the circle. As he looked at the boy, he laughed a hideous laugh which caused the midnight black belly to jiggle like chilling jelly. The spider looked down at the boy with bloodshot eyes and said, "Welcome to now, sucker." The boy immediately went off, racing around, screaming, yelling, and swearing, which only made the spider roar with laughter and its belly jiggle more. The boy was terrified. Without thought, he raced to the closest opening and hurled himself at it, only to slam into wet, sticky web. The spider laughed with such force its body shook. As the boy bounced onto the ground, much of the webbing pulled away with him. He sat there, frightened to his core. He remembered the fox's wisdom. Think before I speak. Think before I act. All the time his eyes were riveted on this giant spider. It was black, except for a large red hourglass shape on its belly. Its legs were hairy. Its eyes were insect eyes with no compassion. Its jaws snapped open and shut like a steel trap. The noise was vicious. The spider had a crystal cone between its eyes that spat out webbing just like a laser gun. Fear raced throughout the boy's body. As he scrambled to his feet, he tried to think of what he should do. He didn't notice two bloodshot eyes peering out of the dark shadows in the corner of the woods to his right. Had he, however, looked over there behind the masses of web, he would have seen, cloaked in tattered green garment, something that looked much like a lizard. But it was so well camouflaged that even by looking directly at it, it still would have been difficult to detect. It never moved, always watching with never blinking eyes. It hid and it watched. Dark sunshine was the perfect little spy. Even if the boy had noticed the spy, his primary concern at this point was to figure out how to get out of the spider's trap, if he could. As the boy gathered himself up, he began to concentrate and put forth great energy to think of a solution to his problem. After a brief period of silence, he looked up at the spider and asked it, "What do you want?" With a venomous grin, the spider hissed, "I'm getting what I want." Again, he asked, "What do you want?" "Are you truly stupid? I've got what I want." This isn't helping me, thought the boy. I have to do something else. So he began to creep closer and closer to another opening. He got only 2 feet closer when the spider cocked its head back and in a fit of laughter screamed, "Fool!" And the boy bolted toward the opening, only to be met by another instantly spun web. He tried and tried to break through, but it was too strong. Gotta buy time, the boy thought to himself. Oh, I've got to get this spider to talk. Yeah, it's my only chance to get out of here. So he looked up at the spider and said, Hey, how long have you been here, man? A long time, was the reply. The boy then asked, Well, have any other travellers like me come through here? Yes, said the spider. Did any of them get away? The spider laughed and the belly quivered. Well, if someone were to get away, to escape, how would he? Said the boy. The spider boomed, It's impossible. But, but, but if a person could, how would he? Murmured the spider. As it pondered the boy's question, it raised a leg, still attached to the web, in order to scratch its head in distracted thought. When it did, the part of the web that was covering an opening lifted up with his leg. Just enough. In the blink of an eye, the boy threw himself at it. He dove through the opening, nearly escaping, all of him except for his right leg. The spider shot webbing, and like a bullwhip, it wrapped around his ankle, jerking him roughly back into the lair. The powerful pull caused the boy's arms to flay out, but luckily, a branch the size of a bat ended up in his right hand. He used the sword like a stick. No, he used the stick like a sword. As he squeezed through the hole and began to run again between the trees, it dawned on him that the fox's advice had helped. It worked, said the boy up to himself. I got out of there by thinking before I acted, and thinking before I talked. Another thought of equal magnitude then struck him. I haven't always been this way. I remember a time when I wouldn't have kept my head. I would have freaked out and probably I would have ended up as lunch. As the boy remembered the way he used to be, a smile crept across his face. It feels good, he thought, to use my head and to not be sorry afterward.